Hi, welcome to Positively Sparking, a podcast on internet marketing, online productivity, and business. Hi, today I'm with Devinat, the founder of Optio, an AdWords automation tool that helps you create profitable Google pay-per-click campaigns quickly. Hi, Guilliame, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how you doing?
Very good indeed. We're excited to have you here today. You're one of the founders of an app that we use quite a lot. So for those of us who don't know you, just tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm one of the founders of Optio, and we work on AdWords automation tools. So specifically, a lot around day-to-day optimization that you would do within an AdWords account. We believe that there's a lot that can kind of be helped or even just automated via machines, and that can kind of free up your time to do some of the more high priority tasks and some of the more strategic level stuff.
Great stuff. And so this must mean that you at some point got into the world of AdWords. It became something that you discovered in a different way, perhaps. How did you get into AdWords?
Yeah. So this is bringing me back to university days as a naive and probably overly optimistic kid, probably 18 years old, and I knew that fairly early on I was pretty fascinated with the idea of I guess the web, and having kind of discovered that, and I started thinking about building businesses, and kind of tried and failed a whole bunch at various attempts to basically make money online. It was a pretty common story. Kind of started there and kind of learned my way
Definitely
up. And traffic in particular, I had a particular fascination for, because it just kind of felt, I just kind of felt a little bit like a video game almost, or there was a lot of dials, a lot of controls, and it felt like if I spent enough time and I learned enough and I spoke and hung out on forums enough, maybe I could figure out this thing. It's something that appealed to me as something that I could learn and grow into, and kind of beat the system. And as I discovered, that's not really the way it all happens, but that was the beginning.
Very good. And so you've mentioned two things there which I think are really important. Number one is you have this entrepreneurial spirit. So you're there at college and you're fascinated by the internet, and you can see something there that you want to be part of. Yeah. And then the second thing was that you tried lots of different things which failed, and we've all been there. That's all part of our journey.
I think it'd be problematic if you didn't.
Agreed. But then there was something that kept you going, and eventually.
So the true. Basically, I eventually needed, or I was graduating, and I needed to tell my parents that I wasn't going to get a job. And so that kind of sped up my process, and I kind of jumped into whatever I could get, and AdWords was kind of the hard skill that I had kind of pieced together, and I kind of hustled my way into a couple of consulting deals in AdWords, and that's where I really dove deep and started fixing other people's businesses, or specifically the acquisition side of other businesses. So that's kind of the tail end of my acceleration into the AdWords world, if you will.
Great, fantastic. So when you're doing that, so you're working on these other businesses, running their AdWords accounts, and you must be realizing there's a common theme to what you're doing, regardless of whatever business they may have, which then makes you realize there's an opportunity for an app.
Correct. Yeah, you've guessed well. I mean, it wasn't quite as smooth. I wish it was. It took a couple of iterations to get here. The first core problem that we attacked was actually a conversion tracking problem. Like time and time again, maybe it was a little too focused on some of the analytical side and the data analysis side. Like that was the piece that I, really enjoyed and wanted to stick to. And I was, routinely frustrated at how, a lot of businesses just didn't have their conversion tracking dialed in. And,
sure.
we wanted to fix that problem, and turns out that it's not. It's a very difficult problem that we moved away from. And other businesses have kind of stepped in. There might be segment.io, or there's a couple of other things, but largely it's still not an exact science.
No, it's not. And you get into this, one of the problems with conversion tracking is attribution, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really difficult to, unless someone clicks from an ad, whether it's on Google or Facebook, or wherever it is, and buys immediately, then we always have this problem of what influence did our advertising have
100%
on an end purchase. Yeah.
And so having grown and evolved in this space, the truth is that it really is part art, part science. And as much as the science piece is very, very attractive, because it feels very like repeatable and solid, there's definitely like an art piece. But going back to having gone after trying to fix conversion tracking, eventually we kind of realized that there was definitely there was still a lot of things that were just taking up a lot of my time, and a lot of the people that I worked with, a lot of their time too, around data analysis. And there were a lot of tasks that just felt like they could be evolved into something more pleasant, something more simple, something more productive. And that was just kind of where the idea was born. And quite quickly people recognized that, like, hey, wow, like I do this every day. Oh my God, like that's really cool. So.
And just one thing you said there, I just want to go back to, which was the idea of it's as much an art as it is a science. And I thought that was a really interesting point, because I agree with you there. And I think the reason all marketing has to be a mix of the two is because really that's what we are as humans. No one is
sure.
100%
I hadn't actually
scientific.
considered it that way, but yeah.
Yeah, it has to reflect us, But having seen Optio grow from its early days as Altus, it feels like it's the scientific side of that equation that you focused on.
That's totally correct, because automating the artistic side is, I think, kind of doomed in a way, or at least I haven't seen it yet. There are other startups trying to do like natural language processing and automated ads, or semi-automated ads and creative, and I still, like, I can't say that I'm particularly convinced yet. Or even same thing with unless you're dealing with a very predictable business. There are other sides like account structure, and certainly some of the more human bits around client communication. There is still, and I kind of believe, always going to be a human component to AdWords work. And so what we want to do is kind of get the rest out of the way so that you can focus on those high impact human bits.
Yeah, which is a great way to describe, I think, what you have there in Optio. So the scientific parts are made much simpler for you because you're showing them there as improvements, and the artistic side is there for us to go and play with, because really the artistic side is the play part, isn't it? Really,
it is. And it's one that I think that if you don't kind of take away some of these really time consuming pieces, which are essential, they need to get done, but the question is, where do you spend your time? And I think that for example, writing a really good ad, it really takes a little bit more so than time. It also takes some mind space. You need to have some space to engage your creative side a little bit. And so it's really hard to do if you got to crank through 20 campaigns to figure out your geo bid mods, or or whatever optimization, going through the search query report, or running statistical analysis on your ad testing and figuring out which ads to pause. I kind of believe that it can kind of give almost a false sense of productivity almost. So it can be a little risky to believe that that's the AdWords work. It's definitely one component of it, but then we can't neglect the other bits.
Absolutely. So, one of my questions on our kind of sheet before we chatted was what will Optio help people do in running their AdWords accounts? And one thing that's come out of you, Guilliame, already is this idea that, we're going to look after everything that's scientific so you can give yourself that headspace to be artistic. Would you agree with that?
I mean, certainly. I mean, I don't know if artistic's necessarily the perfect word, but certainly the best way I have to describe it is some of the more like human components. Yeah. So be it like ad writing, or, let's say that you're doing AdWords work for a client, for example. I would say spend your time talking to your client about who their clients are, and dig a little bit deeper into the business, dig into the target demographics shoes. Do some more research, do a little bit more competitor analysis, figure out what are the common angles, review your account structure, play with or experiment with new campaign ideas that maybe could unlock a whole new pool of keywords and traffic and conversions. All of this kind of requires that you've got the basics down. So I guess in another way to kind of maybe try and explain what we're trying to do is setting a new minimum for, like, we don't really want people to worry about some of these bits that can be largely automated. I say largely because you still want to retain control and still want to make sure that everything's good. I also kind of don't believe in taking, again, humans completely out of the equation, even for some of the scientific bits. At least not yet. Maybe we'll get there one day.
It's not a scary day.
Yeah, I mean, things do change.
Definitely
the day where it'll feel completely normal to a generation to have self-driving cars will be an interesting day, and maybe we'll have some people that say, well, back in my day, we used to do our optimizations manually, but we'll see.
We shall see indeed. So you've built Optio on a specific theory of AdWords, and AdWords is such a vast tool now that we have these different methods and these different ways of doing things that people have. And the approach you've taken is based on the alpha-beta method. So tell us a bit about that.
That's definitely one of the, like, I guess one of the methods. I wouldn't really say that they're definitely like typical account structures. I actually am in the process of kind of writing an updated 2018 version of that, because I have some modifications to the alpha beta methods to propose after seeing a lot of accounts that I can kind of give you a sneak peek of now.
Great.
Which is that basically I think there's a tendency to undervalue simplicity in an account. So that the alpha beta method is fairly intricate, and there's human error can kind of come in, and you might forget to remove a negative or apply a negative to the wrong, especially if you're doing this day in and day out, and especially if you're doing this across many accounts, it's going to happen that you're going to get a little bit messy, basically. Sure. And another thing that I've seen happen with a very traditional alpha beta method is that there can be I've just kind of seen this. What ends up happening is that there's an overall loss of traffic sometimes.
Yes.
So you might say, like, isolate a keyword into an alpha campaign. I don't know if we want to go give a quick recap on what it is, but when you isolate, I think you can probably look it up if you want to. There's a bunch of articles if you just Google like alpha beta method AdWords. Yeah. But if you isolate a keyword and then you negative it across your beta campaigns, overall, I'm not 100% certain that you are guaranteed better results. Instead, and specifically the piece that I find to be sometimes a little harmful is that negative piece. That's the piece that's complicated and can, sometimes result in a loss of volume. So what I still believe in very much, which is part of the alpha beta method, is the idea of isolating a keyword into its own single keyword ad group and writing an ad specific to that keyword. So that I completely believe in. It's just the piece around like then force all the traffic through that ad group by negativing. I don't know if that's really a verb, but by applying a negative, across all the other campaigns. I think that's overcomplicating it. I think now that I've spent even more time and quite a lot more time speaking to account managers, speaking to agencies, reviewing a bajillion accounts, I feel fairly confident that that basically, and you can kind of almost break it down where if you're going to take one of your best keywords, right? Because typically you're going to do an alpha for a very good keyword, and then you're going to be kind of swinging that around as a negative in the account. Like that's pretty dangerous, if you will. So
definitely so.
That's kind of my updated version. But yeah, the core principle of you have a pool of keywords that you're trying out, and bit by bit, kind of like putting something through a sieve, you're figuring out what works, and you're neatly organizing what works into a little container, into a little unit called a single keyword ad group. That's still very much, I think, still quite smart and effective and
Definitely
organized.
so. And I understand what you're saying there. And I think some of this is also changed because of the way AdWords has evolved. Brought in different ways of doing things, brought in better optimization within itself. So AdWords is better now at optimizing our campaigns for conversions than it was 4 or 5 years ago, which I think is maybe when you started. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that does sound about right. I remember there was this question of like, what have I seen change in AdWords? Is that the path we want to go down right now, or were you going to ask another question there?
Yeah, sure. No, go down that path. You tell us what you feel has changed.
Well, the funny thing is that I actually think not that much. I know that we like to, I guess as an industry, there's definitely a lot of news around, changes. We like to kind of keep up with the changes that happen, which I think is a fairly natural and healthy habit. But I don't actually think I don't think they're very big changes. And I'm a guy who very much believes in sticking to the fundamentals of what AdWords is, and I don't yet see many changes to the fundamentals of the dynamic of someone searching for something and then being served for their query. So in my time. In my relatively short time, obviously there's been, the expanded text ads was a thing.
Yeah.
And then recently there was that whole budget thing around, are we going to spend beyond our daily budget? And how is that going to work out in monthly budgets? And there was the whole like exact match is no longer a really exact match. Obviously, the big shift in the new interface change. But I still don't really see that as necessarily big changes to AdWords.
Yeah, because what you're saying is the idea of people searching for things, being shown ads, and us optimizing for and discovering the best keywords for our business based on solid conversion tracking. That's the same for you.
Yeah, very much. I mean, for example, I think something that could be a little bit bigger than all this, which I haven't really seen. There's obviously people on forums or publications that they always kind of post a screenshot of the search query report where you start seeing like some voice searches from like a Google Home or people using voice assistants to search for things like that.
Yeah.
That could be quite interesting. That might be a little bit of a shift of like, I should probably think about that. Kind of in the same way that mobile has really, used to be kind of annoying to cater to mobile. Whereas now I think everybody kind of understands and has the ingrained behavior ourselves to search for things on mobile and to care for the mobile experience. So maybe voice is going to be a thing. I think we still have some time before we need to prepare for that, but I would see that as like a behavior shift and something worth spending and time and consideration.
And
but
development time for Optio, should that happen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Superb. So do you believe, I mean, from everything you've seen, do you believe that AdWords and Optio can work for any business?
I think it'd probably be pretty silly if I said yes. I think there's most likely cases where it wouldn't be a very good fit. As general rules of thumb, so I definitely think that my answer would be most yes. I think that AdWords can work, and then by extension, optimizing those accounts in a productive and nicer fashion using Optio. I think for a lot of businesses that can work. The quick rules of thumb are Optio is obviously a very data-driven piece of software, so there needs to be some data there for it to make recommendations. So a lot of people are kind of usually ask, okay, so how much do I need to be spending? In reality, it's not necessarily a bad question to ask, but it's not so much about the spend as it is about the volume of traffic, so of impressions and clicks. So if you're in an industry where you have 50 cent or 50p CPCs, it's very different to another industry that has, say, £8 or $8 or $12. Sure. And so, typically we find that, at least like a few, it's really hard to give an exact figure, but, you'd want to be at least in the several hundreds, bare minimum. And I think that kind of makes sense. If we're primarily, we don't yet help you build an account from scratch. That's definitely something that we're looking at, right? But if you're absolutely brand new and starting, you probably won't find that much use for Optio. Once you have something up and running and you want help maintaining it and optimizing it, and feeling secure and good about that, then Optio comes into play. So there's that. And then there's, AdWords. When people say AdWords, they typically think of search, but AdWords obviously has display, it has YouTube, it has Gmail, it has shopping. Shopping is something that's currently very much on the cards and in development. Display is also something that we help with quite well, that we're pretty thorough about. This leaves Gmail and YouTube, which are kind of different beasts, and we have yet to tackle. So I'd say it's pretty rare that an account has primarily YouTube and Gmail traffic, but I'm sure it can happen. So these are some of the current boundaries of Optio.
Absolutely.
So the data piece and the channels within the AdWords network.
Definitely so. One of the toughest things I would say for someone using Optio to get used to is when people ask about budget, one of the things that you promote is this idea that there should be no budget on a campaign, provided that what we spend has a positive return on investment. And that, I think, is tough for any small business to get hold of. Is that something that you see continuing as an Optio recommendation?
That's interesting. Yeah, I do believe that there's definitely, if you don't necessarily know a lot about AdWords, you're gonna stick to the very basic building blocks of how the system works, which might be money in, money out, and this question of budget sounds very, very important. And of course, like it is in if you're going to outsource your AdWords channel to an agency, that's definitely something that needs to be spoken about. Expectations around how much money in, and also how much money out do we think, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely important. But in the actual practice of investing that money, I'm still very much on board with follow the performance. So I definitely believe in that within a global budget, it should be kind of fairly fluid based on what's working, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Yeah,
Go on.
but I don't really believe in that. Budgets should always be unlimited. Certainly
Mm,
not. I mean, that very much is a business. I consider that to be a little bit outside of AdWords around, well, what's their marketing budget? How is it
sure.
split up between the various marketing channels? So in that sense, I don't necessarily believe in an unlimited, uh, you know, an unlimited budget.
Sure.
So
So, good to know. And a lot of that comes down to cash flow, doesn't it? There's a difference between profitability and cash flow. And different businesses receive money at different times. So some businesses will do a transaction and the money's straight into their account. But if it's a service-based business, then the spend may have happened on AdWords, but their income may be 2, 3 months ahead in the future. So it's
completely.
managing that process of cash flow,
Yeah,
which
specific to
is
small business, absolutely. That's definitely super duper important.
definitely so. Which is actually not with us as an agency. This is actually one of the areas that an AdWords account can get into difficulties. It's not right to say it's gone wrong because of cash flow, but it becomes a factor for a business that grows because
Yeah.
they want more things and they need to cash flow that. What other things do you find are the most common areas where AdWords accounts go wrong?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot that can go wrong. I mean, anywhere from, maybe we could start with the macro before the micro. Obviously, like, I guess to specify what I mean by micro is all of the kind of waste that occurs in an account. And that's very much what Optio is around for fighting that waste and to maximize the efficiency of an account. So beyond micro, of which there's again a lot. There's usually lots of stale ad tests and lots of kind of opportunities that have been missed or mistakes that are kind of lurking underneath and have yet to be discovered. But beyond that, I touched on this earlier. I think that AdWords accounts can go quite wrong when they're overcomplicated.
Mm-hmm.
I think again, there's this desire, kind of like the mad scientist with a lab coat kind of feeling of, oh my God, I have so many dials and controls. I'm going to create the world's most sophisticated and best AdWords account. Here we go. Let's get out the Excel spreadsheet and get the macros out and build this monster. And then eventually, it gets rebuilt by another agency, and you end up with this Frankenstein thing that kind of works, where you're a little bit afraid to touch certain bits of it. And I think there's a general undervaluing of simplicity in an account. So that's something that I actually see quite frequently, is this overbuilding a little bit too quickly before, again, and I touched on this again, is not spending enough time on the fundamentals and on things that we feel are pretty secure to pursue and to start with. That might seem not as practical. This is relating to, another question of like, were you to start today, where do you start? And I would say start with some of the bits that don't try and get too clever. Don't try and stick with the things that are probably going to work. So like a classic example of this is if you're starting an account, there's a desire to hunt for the low CPCs, right? You're always trying to
Yes.
find the cheap clicks. That's something that very, very quickly comes as an idea. And I would actually advocate for the opposite and say, go for the expensive clicks. Those are the ones that are proven to work. Those are the ones that other people are making money out of. And so I would start with that. And another example around this is around keyword selection, and the idea that, again, there's a desire to be quite sophisticated and to think laterally and create some things. And again, I would say start with the things that are quite obvious, right? So, I don't necessarily have an offhand example, but let's imagine, for example, you're doing lead gen for an electrician. And so before you get into, hey, my light bulbs or my circuits don't look quite right, or search terms like that, start with electrician followed by postcode or location, if that makes sense.
It does. It does.
Like start with things that are really, really obvious and quite descriptive of. Again, you got to imagine that somebody else is typing this and they're going to see your ad and then go to your website. And does that experience match exactly what they're looking for? Or is it kind of loose? And if it's loose, I don't start with that stuff.
Definitely right. And I think, two things from an agency point of view that you're so right in saying are things that make everything more complicated is when we open an account for a client and they've either set it up themselves or had someone else do it with too much thought. It's just so intimidating to see 100 campaigns with 2 or 3 ad groups in each one, and not anywhere near enough spend to justify 100 campaign.
Of course,
because
yeah.
Then no one is getting enough data to make any decisions which are going to be that positive. It's just
Absolutely.
spread across.
And there's always, I'm totally used to do this myself earlier on. I used to have things, segmented 4 different ways, and I had my US slash, gender slash age range slash beta, right? Like I had this broken out, and I would always tell myself that, well, it's okay because, using the dimensions tab and using tags, I can reaggregate the data and look at that. And really, I feel like we forget that if we're going to make it harder for us in the future, there's going to be much less of a tendency to keep an eye on it and much less ease seeing what's going on. And that's a very, very high cost to pay for probably, in reality, quite little benefit.
That's exactly it. And it's really looking at that, isn't it? How much time do we have to manage our AdWords account? And what benefit do we gain from introducing complexity?
Yeah.
Because once it's there, it's gonna take time to work with.
Very much.
Great stuff. So what lays ahead for both yourself and Optio?
Well, I think we're gonna continue what we're doing. So, and specifically, I think that there's some opportunity on the shopping side, like I mentioned. That's something that we're interested in, that we want to cover. We also want to explore, again, coming back to science versus art, or science versus human. We want to explore enabling some of that human side. So we're in discussion, and we're talking a lot about the fundamentals of client reporting for agencies to clients, and that relationship, and how to build things around that that can help.
Mm-hmm.
And then back to the science side, I think that we've done a pretty good job at covering a lot of the bases, but to go deeper, I think we're going to need to look at tailoring our algorithms to the different business models that tend to exist with AdWords. So this might be e-commerce versus lead gen, things like that. Maybe certain verticals. So digging a little bit deeper in optimizations that are slightly more specific to some of these things. Because not all AdWords accounts are born equal, and certainly not all web businesses. They tend to fall within, at a minimum, certain buckets that we can cater to a little bit differently.
I think that is a great idea. So to develop Optio to the point where we can say this is an e-commerce business,
correct?
Then that you're looking for sales turnover. As a conversion to metric against, whereas lead generation is much different. It's really just the beginning of a longer funnel, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Overall. So I think that would be a great move, and there's so many opportunities opening up in that realm in both senses. There's more e-commerce businesses than ever before, and on the lead generation side, that industry is almost becoming service specific. So life coaches right now are all jumping all over funnels and different ways of lead generation for themselves, and you can see how that would really work out well for you.
Well, yeah. Well, from my perspective, you can definitely identify patterns or certainly delineate some big puzzle pieces of, the entire web business world.
I bet.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's kind of the general, without revealing too much. I think that's the general direction that we're taking at the moment.
Great stuff. So Guilliame, it's been a lot of fun chatting with you today about AdWords. From your perspective, it's interesting to hear how you find the platform from the other side of the fence, from the app side, as opposed to the agency side. But
Sure.
Tell us where we can find you online.
So you can shoot me an email. There might be a little bit of a delay before I answer, but I do read and certainly try to answer every email. So my email would be guillaume@optio.com. Or another way to reach me is to go to optio.com and use the intercom chat bubble at the bottom right. They'll probably be the two easiest ways to get in touch with me.
Great, superb. And Optio is still running a free trial, I believe?
That's correct, yeah, and with no intention to change that.
Great stuff. So if you're running AdWords, go along, give it a go. It's a tool that we've used for a number of years now. And it's a great way to help run your AdWords accounts. And any final message you have for everybody?
Keep it up. It's a battle every day, but it sure is a lot of fun.
Taking us back to that idea of a game when you described AdWords as a game in the beginning.
Yeah, a little bit.
Great stuff. Well, thank you so much for being here today. It's great to talk to the founder of something that we think is a great app, and look forward to seeing the changes ahead in 2018.
Absolutely. We plan on having a lot of them.
This podcast was brought to you by Positive Sparks, online advertising and pay-per-click agency for UK e-commerce businesses. If you would like 3 free tips on how to use pay-per-click to grow your business, please visit us at 3tips.positivesparks.com today.